somebody who probably doesn't frequent Bass Pro Shops either is joining the show right now. Howard Beck from Sports Illustrated with NBA free agency kicking off today. Howard, when was the last time you were in a Bass Pro Shop?
I'm going to say never, probably.
Fishing culture is big in the NBA. Paul George, big fisherman.
Yeah.
Not a part of your life growing up in the Beck household, huh?
I'm not an angler. Do they still call themselves anglers?
Yeah, anglers. Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay. I don't know what angles have to do. Angling. I don't. It's all a mystery to me. I might have fished once or twice when back when I was a kid and we went like camping or something. It's been a while since I had a rod in my hand and was casting anything anywhere. So yeah.
I think we just came up with a new show, Howard. I think we need to see NBA basketball journalists Survivor. Who do you think would win that show?
I've already lost, apparently.
Yeah, no, you're an early exit from the tribe, but who do you see surviving the campfires and winning NBA journalist Survivor?
Oh, man. That's good. I'm going to have to think on that for a little bit. Certainly, probably one of the younger generation, right? Like I'm up there. Like I'm just going to get, thrown overboard real early on.
So worldwide Rob, you think, or Count on Vic on Twitter could live off the land.
Yeah, exactly. But, everybody does the job a little differently, right? So some people are just real great operators and so would find a way to just kind of connive their way to the end, whether or not they had these skills to survive, right? And that's really what those shows are about. You don't have to be the best at any given thing. You just have to find a way to manipulate everybody else. So, we could get really deep in the weeds on that, and I'd probably offend everybody that I ever worked with in an NBA press room. So,
so I think that's what I'd like to do for the rest of the conversation. Do you think Rick Bucher can be trusted? No, I'm just kidding.
Ben, Howard.
I'm definitely not trusting Buke. He'd turn on me in a second.
Howard did not expect to get these type of questions today, or on any show that he goes on.
Nor did I expect to do this. But Howard's an old buddy. We did GM school together for NBA TV, which was a fun show about a year and a half ago now at this point, where we were constructing.
The last thing that we did. It was almost the last thing we did before shutdown. I did that, and then I went to Sloan Conference in Boston a few days after that, Ben, and that was it. Those were literally the last two things I did outside of my apartment.
The first person I remember who didn't feel comfortable shaking hands with me because of germs and corona was Sam Mitchell. I just remember Sam Mitchell was the first guy giving out pounds.
Militant about it.
Yes, he was.
He wanted to bump like ankles. That was about it. That was the extent of it. And we were thinking, I don't remember how you reacted, but my thought back in the green room with Sam Mitchell was like, all right, dude, I get it, but chill. Like, it's not that bad. Like, you're being a little bit overboard here, because little did we know it was, and that was the thing. Like, it wasn't even about shaking hands. It was like, don't breathe each other's air. But, we knew nothing on March 10th or whatever that was when we were, stupidly hanging out and filming TV shows.
No, let's make sure that history doesn't revise itself. While the country didn't know how to handle the pandemic, Sam Mitchell was on top of it. Sam Mitchell was...
Absolutely. We should have made him the public health czar.
Sam Mitchell, the new Dr. Fauci. Howard Beck joins the show. Ben Lyons in for Rich on the Rich Eisen Show. Well, I talk about GM School because that show was all about aspiring front office executives learning how NBA teams and rosters are built and put together. Well, now we get real GM School. Now it's August 1st, the new July 1st. So with $52.6 million in cap space, the Knicks have the most cap space this offseason. Who else do you see spending some money and making some real moves that you think might shake up the culture of their team?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of eyes on the Knicks because they have this unexpected breakthrough season, overachieved by a lot, and that's to their credit. But they also did it in a way where you look at the roster and you're not sure how sustainable it is, because it's not like it was a lot of talent. So you credit them for how much they got out of what limited talent they had, but now you've even raised the bar that much more and the expectations that much more for what comes next. So you've got all this cap room, more than anybody in the league. You are in one of the greatest markets possible to attract free agents. Can you overcome, was it enough in 1 year under Tibbs and Leon Rose to overcome the years and in fact decades of infamy and free agents actively avoiding that franchise? Do people feel better about them now enough to take the money? But the other problem is a more fundamental one, which is, okay, let's say that this is a great destination now, the Knicks, and free agents want to come. There's just not a lot at the top tier to attract. So if you're looking for, Julius Randle's ideally a number 2, not a number 1. So if you're looking for a number 1, well, I just don't know that any of those guys are available. Can you find another guy who's at, Julius Randle level, or a couple of like really solid, kind of just a tier below all-star? And there are good players available, but this is not a great year for free agency. So their cap room, they either have to decide to roll it over to next year and reserve some of that for when you might get a crack at some bigger stars, or you're going short term, going on 1-year deals with guys. Or there are other creative ways to use it, right? You can make uneven trades and absorb guys into cap room. But again, who's available? Is Dame Lillard going to become available? As of now, still doesn't look like it. Bradley Beal, all indications are that he's staying put. And so, I don't know who they get at this point. Then you asked, who else is going to make a big splash? I mean, the Lakers already have in making that agreed upon deal for Westbrook. I'm not sure I'm convinced that that's a deal that moves them forward, but it's certainly a flashy deal.
Howard Beck joins the show, Sports Illustrated, and an early front runner on NBA journalist Survivor. We were talking about another team that's got some cap space this year, $33.5 million worth, are the Dallas Mavericks. And everybody on this show loves Luka. They're on the Luka 77 diet of beige food and cigarettes. What do you think the Mavericks do around Luka?
Well, they've been one of the teams that for months have been, well, let's go back before months. Oh, if you roll back the calendar for a year, they were a team that was positioning themselves to try to chase Giannis. Before Giannis had signed the max extension, Dallas, Miami, Toronto, those were all teams that were hoping to put themselves in position to steal Giannis. That's obviously not going to happen. So then the fallback for all those teams has been a variety of other guys. And, I don't think anybody really thought, even if he were healthy, that Kawhi Leonard was going to leave L.A. It still looks like, injured and rehabbing from ACL surgery, that Kawhi Leonard probably stays. And would you want to sign a guy that you thought was probably missing the entire season anyway? So for the Mavericks, Kyle Lowry would be a phenomenal addition. All indications in the last 24 to 48 hours are that Miami is positioning itself to be in position to grab Lowry, and nothing's certain until it happens. But if they get him, again, now the Mavericks are in a position where where else do you go? You probably re-sign Tim Hardaway Jr. He's become very important for them. They need help up front. Are they a destination for somebody like a Rashawn Holmes? Is there, are there other guys that they could pry loose to bolster the front court next to Porzingis? But they do need another playmaker. Like, so much is in Luka's hands, and that's generally a good thing. Luka does a lot of great things with the ball in his hands, scoring and playmaking. But you need to give him a little bit of relief. And so if not Lowry, maybe they're a Spencer Dinwiddie destination. Maybe they find their way into the Lonzo Ball discussions. Mike Conley, if he were to leave Utah, but nobody believes that's going to happen. So I do think that's probably top of the list, though, for them, is another playmaker to relieve some of the burden on Luka.
Howard Beck joins the show, Sports Illustrated. Ben Lyons filling in for Rich on the Rich Eisen Show. Howard, you've been covering the game at such a high level for so many years. You're as dialed in as anybody. So you're probably familiar with the fact that it's a kind of a foregone conclusion in NBA circles that Zion Williamson's going to come save the New York Knicks. Do you think the Pelicans do anything to try and keep Zion? What happens with Lonzo, and what do they do in New Orleans working on their third coach now under 3 years with Zion Williamson?
Spoken like a true New Yorker.
I'm just putting out the sources and the things I hear from sources around the league, because I'm like you, Howard. I'm just a guy who's been around the league a long time.
It's never too early to tie up-and-coming superstars to the Knicks. It's just never too early. Zion, of course, has totally encouraged that by getting all cutesy and winky with the media about talking about the Garden, love playing at the Garden. It's way too soon for this, like way, way, way too soon, even by New York media standards for that stuff. I mean, nobody in the history of the NBA since, this current structure was created with max contracts and a rookie deal, and then you get your first max deal after that. No one's ever turned down the max deal that comes after your rookie contract if you're an up-and-coming superstar. And Zion Williamson will not be the first. He's not going to force his way out in the next couple of years. So he's heading into year 3. Then there will be a year 4 that's also on the option, and then year 5 is when you can start talking about extension and everything. He'll take the extension off of it just like everybody does, and we can talk about Zion Williamson having wandering eyes, sometime in the year 2025, 26. But it's too soon right now. I do think the Pelicans have a clear urgency, as you always do in this league. When you get a guy who is a transcendent, generational kind of player, the clock is ticking always. The clock is not ticking as loudly for a guy who's going into year 3 as it is for a guy going into year 6 or 7. But the clock is always ticking, and you have an obligation and a burden or responsibility to build out a competitive roster, a playoff caliber team at minimum, as quickly as possible, and selling them on the idea that you know what you're doing and that you've got a direction, and that direction is going to give them a chance to contend for titles. And if you don't do that quickly enough and competently enough, we see what the consequences are. And that franchise knows it better than anyone because, and it's not the current administration, it's not even the current ownership, but the New Orleans team, formerly the Hornets, now the Pelicans, lost Chris Paul once upon a time back in 2011, and then years later lost Anthony Davis. LeBron James, of course, left Cleveland after his first 7 years there because they couldn't break through, and that was a team that had made the finals and won 60 games. So the Pelicans do have a lot of work to do, and they got to do it quickly, and they're clearly moving swiftly. I mean, to their credit, yeah, we could say 3 coaches in 3 years, but to their credit, they realized the mistake that Stan Van Gundy was not going to work for them, that he was not the right fit, and they moved on as quickly as possible. And they saw that Steven Adams was the wrong investment from a year ago, and they moved on from him as quickly as possible. We'll see what's next.
Howard, 5 years ago on July 1st, NBA fans were blessed with the signings of Timofey Mozgov and Luol Deng in Los Angeles for $150 million. We saw things like Alan Crabb get 4 years, $70 million. Chandler Parsons, who had a billboard on Beverly and La Cienega, he got $90 million, signed his deal in a nightclub. What's going to be the signing? Who's going to be the guy this year that NBA fans wake up on August 2nd and 3rd and go, huh? How did that happen?
Well, I mean, the year you're pointing to, 2016, was, of course, the year of the notorious salary cap spike, this once-in-a-lifetime probably occurrence that, created way too much cap room and way too many mediocre free agents getting overpaid. I mean, there's always somebody, but that summer was its own anomaly, its own weird occurrence just because of how much cap room was suddenly available to basically all 30 teams because of that cap spike. This is not that kind of summer. I mean, guys might get overpaid because there just aren't enough good players in this free agent market, but there also aren't a ton of teams with cap room to spend wildly. So will somebody overpay Dennis Schroeder? Yeah, maybe. Will somebody, maybe go a little overboard on maybe Spencer Dinwiddie? Because that's the thing. We've got this good point guard class, but like Chris Paul probably stays in Phoenix, and Mike Conley probably stays in Utah. And then Lowry ends up, let's say, with Miami. Well, then what is Dallas doing about a point guard? What is Chicago doing about a point guard? What are the Knicks doing about a point guard? That next tier is going to end up potentially getting inflated salaries, but not on the order of the, Alan Crabb, Timofey Mozgov, Luol Deng kind of deals from 2016.
Good. So you mean that eventually the Knicks will stop paying Joakim Noah? You think that'll happen in my lifetime, or they'll continue to pay Joakim Noah because of the summer of 2016?
I have not looked up what the stretch provision has left on it for Joakim, but someday Joakim Noah will come off the books. Someday Josh Smith will possibly come off the Pistons books. There's a couple of those out there.
Howard, appreciate you taking the time on a very busy August 1st for you, my friend. Thanks for spending some of it with us.
No, absolutely, Ben. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.